Thanks everyone for joining the webinar. Before we start, a quick note about the questions related to the speech. I'll answer some of them at the end of each section, and all of them at the end of the speech. The topic I want to talk about is application-wide refactoring, the ways and the best practices on how to accomplish it without getting stuck. During my career, I saw many attempts, both successful and not, to rewrite the legacy application. And I personally participated more than 4 times. And based on this experience, I found some helpful practices that just significantly increases the chances to accomplish the refactoring process successfully, of course. Briefly about me, my name is Vlad. I'm a full-stack software engineer with more than 10 years of experience. And for the last 4 years, I have been working in management roles as well, primarily as a technical lead. I primarily use a Python plus TypeScript stack, usually Django and React, if it matters. So about the topic, a short outline of this speech. The first section will be about the causes why it happens in general. And then I'll cover some tips and practices that help me and that I personally use. And at the end of the speech, I'll answer any questions you have. So let's move on. Let's talk about the first part, the reason why it happens. And I'll start with a fun picture that perfectly represents the problem. It is a common question that always appears in most of the conversations, especially with the business-oriented people. Why do we need to waste time and money on the customer unrelated stuff? Is it really required? Can we just support the previous app? And although as an engineer, I understand causes why it's required, it's a pretty valid question because refactoring usually blocks every feature development and every customer-facing stuff. So even essential. So because of that, it's better to consider rewriting as the latest option. However, there are always some cases when it's the only option or the most efficient option to fix the problem, to unlock potential, the technical potential and speed potential of development. And these reasons listed there, the first one, pretty obvious and pretty clear, is outdated technical stack, or even the core libraries. It seems to be pretty obvious when fundamental technologies become outdated, the application becomes outdated as well. And no one currently wants to maintain a Delphi, Lisp, jQuery, or Backbone. So it also increases effort for the maintenance because all connected libraries or plugins quickly become unsupported. And usually when you're facing an issues with them, you have to fork them and fix the bugs by yourself, which is significantly more tricky since it's a third-party library and you do not have experience previously with fixing this library. But bad news that there is no way to protect against that. The industry is evolving and new technologies joins the game every year. And generally, it's a good sign for the industry, but it's a bad sign for the concrete application and its challenges. The next one is a fundamental design mistakes or complete absence of knowledge, which means pretty the same thing. Of course, everyone makes mistakes, but core and fundamental design mistakes can cause huge problems later. It growing, the bad thing that it's growing during the time, because everyone implements their own features, like every team, connected with this fundamental mistake. For example, it's not really the best example, but it's pretty clear, represents the problem. Inappropriate pagination design can lead to performance issue, which is pretty difficult to solve during the time because it's already implemented in all lists query and in all pages that displays the list. And also the problem with this reason is the faster you start, the less you are required to spend in this case. So you have to start quicker because problem is growing over the time. And sometimes I want to highlight that. So it's not only about mistakes that we make as engineers, it's also about mistakes, not the mistakes. It comes from the new challenges that business are facing, that the application are facing. So it's the previous application probably isn't designed to solve these challenges. So that's the problem. However, this reason must be separated from just dislike technologies or patterns. It's mostly about the problems with them, not about our feeling about these technologies itself. There is, before the next section starts, there is a time for short Q&A. If there is any questions regarding this section, please just type them. I'll wait for several seconds. And if not, I'll start this section with two very important statements. The first one, keep in mind that the application rewriting and global refactoring is always significantly more difficult than it looks like. It's pretty silver rule that we just always have to keep in mind during the whole process, and especially when we are considering it. The second one, before you start, define a clear and concrete goal for the refactoring process. It helps to validate the reason when you just starting it, and it also helps to separate that reasons from your personal opinions about like design and technologies that are using in the application from the essential challenges with the real problems that application facing. And the first tip and rule that I found by my experience is you always have to set up a process instead of a task. Planning required steps, defining deadlines, starting work are pretty common ideas. And usually people start with that. However, as I mentioned 2 slides before, the problem becomes more significant in when we go further. And the better approach is to run new app in sync with the previous app and connect them somehow so that we can deliver the new application in sync, and we can just start expanding the new application over the previous one. That helps to control the effort we spend on the refactoring process, because we can just simply pause it or even stop when we found that the business facing a different challenges and we have to use engineers in a different way or like engineering process. We also can control risks using that process because we can prioritize application parts, and at the beginning we can pick the safest parts, the risk-free parts, and when we just catch all the problems with the design we use and the way how do we deliver this application, we can come to the more valuable pages. We also can quickly roll back the changes, just a single part that we deliver recently when we found a critical bug or something that we just forget to implement. And that's a really, really helpful process. A perfect example could be the project at my current job. We are refactoring a front-end application currently, and we running both applications, a legacy one and a new one, and trying to switch them page by page, grouping that by areas. So we switching area by area. And even though the full process is a pretty long journey, it helped us to deliver already around 50% of the application. And that means we're already capable to add any new features to this new part, to this new application. So it actually unlocked 50% of application to be a modern one and to deliver features efficiently and quicker. The next one is learn more about the current application before you start refactoring. This statement based on the idea that many unclear decisions and patterns that you think in the current application have hidden reasons. And there are also many hidden issues and challenges that you currently just don't know. In addition, it helps separate realistic reasons from far-fetched ones. You just can try to accomplish one or two major features over the legacy application, and you quickly improve your knowledge about the application, the design, and the way how it's and the reasons why it was designed that way. You find, of course, you probably find the design problems or anything else, but you also find the insights why it was designed that way. I personally made this mistake almost 7 years ago. It was one of my first attempts for rewriting the application. The application was written in PHP. It was around 1,000 lines of code, and it was not too complicated. It doesn't look too complicated. And we decided to refactor or rewrite it from scratch initially. And when the team and I rolled out the new application, we quickly realized that statistics and payments are incorrect sometimes for specific customers. Then we found that the previous application had a mistake in statistic aggregation a long time ago. And when customers comes and dispute that, they usually told that, oh, okay, my Google Analytics display me a different numbers than your app. The engineers just adds the delta row directly to the database. And that was just the way how they solved the problem. It was a trade-off. But surprisingly, the new app didn't support this mechanic because even no one knows about that. And it's pretty important. And also, it sounds simple right now, but we spent almost a quarter trying to investigate and find the problem because there is no one in the company remembered about the problem exists. And back to the topic, it's a pretty important step when you're starting or considering rewriting to learn why the current application was designed that way and how it was designed actually. Going to the next one, pick your common technical stack. As I've seen, using new fresh technologies when building a new app is really popular idea. It comes with the words, wow, this new technology solves all our challenges. So we can just quickly run our application from scratch within a month, or I don't know. But it seems to be a bad concept. The refactoring is already a complicated challenge, and we have to focus on reducing effort rather than increasing it. And moreover, usually the new frameworks and fresh libraries significantly increase the chances of making a fundamental mistake one more time just because of lack of experience. Sometimes it's lack of experience over the team, but sometimes it's lack of experience across the industry, which becomes a more significant issue because it's too fresh. The best possible option is to use the current stack, if possible, and of course, if it's not outdated. It also gives much more flexibility in running. When you're running both apps, you have more options to synchronize these apps and synchronize sessions, data, or anything, because you can reuse parts or use different options to design this transfer process. Going to the next one, educate people and improve engineering culture. This comes from the idea that the legacy app was created by existing people and existing processes. Without changing them, the result would be the same. And to just trying to build something different, we have to focus also to changing the culture or the processes or even the people. And I suggest to answer the question, do we have a process to control that everyone is on the same page with the ways we designed the new app and with the challenges we have with the previous app? It's not about blame or guilt for the previous mistakes. It's about preventing them in future. So this information must be transparent and clear to everyone, just to prevent them making the same mistakes in the new one. Or actually, in addition, we can also establish a process just to review the patterns we use in the new application all the time, especially in the beginning, to prevent just the repeated problems with the fundamental mistakes. Going to the next, keep focus on the refactoring process. It sounds pretty simple, but it's more challenging to do because stakeholders and product owners have many essential features that they want to add immediately. Especially when the new app is much better, it simplifies engineering process and speed up engineering process. It would take less time. So they just start trying to force it. They start trying to add it on the top of backlog because all of these features was in their mind already for a long time. Although we must keep these features in mind during application design, and we have to solve the challenges that we are facing to solve these challenges in the new app to be able to implement these features. It's safer to separate these steps, at least to the different sprints. But it's better to have significantly more separation. It prevents like the feature stretching or the time stretching that is required to refactoring process for the particular area or service. So you can, and the team and the product owner have more control with the risk. If the feature takes more time, the team can decide to postpone it to the next quarter, to the next year. But when the refactored pod have been already delivered. And as well, it separates issues that comes from the refactoring process and from the feature. It's much easier to find and solve them when we have it separate in a separate sprints and in the separate process in the time boundaries as well. However, it doesn't mean a total block for any features in the list. I usually pick up a low-hanging fruit since it's produce no effort, but adds some value for the business useless refactoring process. So it's definitely helpful to give some value to the customers. And a pretty good indicator to find that you are making this mistake. If your technical story exists, if in the technical story exists the functionality that wasn't exist in the previous app, it's actually a mark that it should be separated to different features. And the last one tip, and is actually pretty valuable and helpful, is involve the product owner into that process. And it's the most common mistake I've ever seen, based on the idea that the product owner is just disturb the engineers. But from my standpoint, it looks like a misalignment between product owner and the team. The product owner role in the refactoring process is slightly different, but it's still required and absolutely mandatory. We just need someone who help organize things around, prioritize things, and help us with the risk management. And even more, we can describe product owner as a customer advocate. And in that case, it's absolutely obvious that having this role in the team is mandatory. We want to deliver a useful for the customer application, so we have to have a customer advocate in the team that can just check that we are doing right way. I also listed some important points that product owner can help with. The first one is skipping and removing unused parts of the application, because usually a legacy applications comes with a lot of useless features. Some parts are was implemented, delivered, but it's never used anymore. And finding and removing them can significantly speed up the process and simplifies the final application as well. Even more, a product owner can help with management, with managing priorities based on values and risk. So he can just, once you are aligned together, you can figure out you can take the first safest option at the beginning, and then you can switch to the more valuable, usually the most valuable areas of the application to be refactored and to unlock the potential here. And he also can help with the communication with other departments, because there are a lot of communications, of course. Once you deliver a new page, a refactored page, it changes. It sometimes comes with bugs, of course, and sometimes it comes with a lot of improvements. So there are many communications around with customer support, with sales managers, with everyone. this is point where product owner definitely may help. So global app refactoring or rewriting is always a challenging process. But the following tips helped me finish it several times successfully and seriously decrease time required for the refactoring and actually risk when the refactoring was happening. So don't be afraid of it and have luck. That's it. And it's time for the question. Just post them to the chat. Or there is a separate Q&A section. Yeah, I forgot to mention, this speech also recorded, and the recording will be available in a week. So you can contact later me using a LinkedIn. I posted my LinkedIn to the chat, or you can write a comment on the event page. So I can also answer that. Okay, there is a question. Is it worth allocating 2 months for refactoring, or is it better to combine refactoring with the development of new features? This is a good question. I guess my answer will be based on the first slide. So it's better to combine refactoring with the development of new features. So it actually easier to sell for the business. That's first. Than the allocating 2 months, because 2 months is usually too risky. What's gonna happen if you refactor at 50% of the application for 2 months? What are you gonna do after that? After the time limit finished? But when you establish the process, it's much more flexible. You can spend 2 months during that to establish this process and to focus on the refactoring, and then you can later just doing an improvements, like technical improvements over the time, step by step, together with building new features. I hope it answers for the question. Yeah, thanks for the question. The question is how to convince the manager that refactoring is necessary. That's a difficult question. And it depends. It depends on how obvious the problems. Sometimes it's not really too difficult because everyone on the same page, but with that the current application is outdated and we don't know how to maintain it further. So in that case, it's pretty clear for everyone. In some cases, I guess if you have a low-hanging fruit, like if you have a simple step a simple first step to establish 2 applications, or like the new architecture and the old architecture in the same time, and to connect them quickly, it's pretty good first step. So you do not need that strict improvement from manager. You can start doing this process by yourselves. You can do a separate application, and you can trying to build new features using this new application, but still support the old one. And then over the time, you just increasing the size of the new application, and it simplifies development. And it also simplifies this conversation with manager, just because you're asking for a less time. each step is smaller, so it requires less time, and it's much easier to agree with spending, I don't know, a sprint for the first step of refactoring and not more. And then depending on the load, you can spend 10% of the sprint or 20, 15, doesn't matter. You can control that. So if there is any question, just write it into the chat. Otherwise, we can finish the talk. And thanks everyone for joining, and hope this was helpful for everyone. And as I said, you can connect me using LinkedIn or via LinkedIn or using the event page on Codementor. That's it. Have a good evening or day, depending on your time zone. Bye.